I don't think I've quite seen another show that got timing right like Regular Show did. Now, at first, when you hear me say that, you probably think, oh, he's talking about how good the comedic timing is, and while in a lot of instances it is, what I mean by timing in this case is how Regular Show first came out at a brilliant time. A lot of cartoons are good because they're timeless. Think early SpongeBob or Ed, Edd n Eddy. Then there's cartoons that were good at the time they came out, but didn't end up aging very well, like Rocko's Modern Life or My Gym Partner's a Monkey. Regular Show, to me, is a rare example of a show that came out at exactly the right time. No later and no earlier. In the early 2010s, Cartoon Network was dominated by Adventure Time and Regular Show, and to a lesser extent Gumball. But that would become more popular later on. Of course, dominated is a relative term, as all three of these shows were dominant in terms of original programming. But very clearly, Johnny Test dominated Cartoon Network holistically at the time. Now, why was this? Well, it was a popular show among the target audience of children at the time, a lot of episodes were made, and so a lot of them could be aired in reruns without it getting stale, and it was a cheap Canadian show, so the rights were probably cheap as well. Maybe some of my Canada experts in the comments can explain, but I always assumed Johnny Test was more popular over here than it was in Canada. I don't know. The reason I bring up Johnny Test's domination of Cartoon Network in the early 2010s is that Regular Show was its perfect antidote, and it's clear to see which one had more longevity, and which one ended swiftly despite its popularity and had its niche filled by Teen Titans Go. By the way guys, side note, if you want me to review a good Teen Titans Go episode, let me know in the comments. I've thought about doing it, but I want your opinion on the subject. Anyway, Regular Show was the perfect antidote to Johnny Test due to the way its jokes were set up. Both shows tried to make the premise of an unlikable protagonist work. One succeeded at this, and the other one didn't. And the reason Regular Show is the one that succeeded in making unlikable protagonists is actually pretty simple. The status quo is treated as the default point in any series of supernatural events that happens every episode. That seems pretty unrelated to character dynamics at first glance, but if you give it some thought, it makes sense. In Johnny Test, the two sisters are super scientific geniuses, which might not seem mundane, but for a cartoon, it kind of is, since we've seen it in Jimmy Neutron, Phineas and Ferb, Dexter's Laboratory. It's kind of been done before. The only difference with those shows and Johnny Test is that the protagonist isn't the one that's the super genius character. Regular Show defies the mundane by having the beginning of the episode be the slice of life part of the episode, but then suddenly the conflict of the episode unravels into some huge supernatural event, with the end of the episode going back to the status quo more times than not. This is why the name of the show, Regular Show, is ironic. And why this works better than Johnny Test is that, first of all, the jokes are unique and not cliché. Because Johnny Test was so cliched, it meant that the jokes being told were more by the book. Regular Show jokes could only happen on Regular Show, and that's a very huge distinction between the two.
Coffee, 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 coffee.
Ah, cool, a contract. Let's sign it.
Coffee, coffee.
But enough comparing Johnny Test to its antidote Regular Show. What reasons intrinsic to Regular Show made it so great in the early 2010s? The early 2010s was plagued with cartoons that I like to call bro-dude shows. After the success of Adventure Time, and arguably inspired even earlier by Flapjack, or possibly even earlier than that with SpongeBob, how these shows would work is that they would star two douchebags going around and being annoying, but since their primary character trait was negative, i.e. being annoying, and because they constantly have victories in their shows, not only did the jokes not land like they were supposed to, the stories weren't fun to watch. Shows like this were the overly disgusting shows in the 90s and the toy and video game adaptations of the 80s. Regular Show and Adventure Time are really the only two examples of the bro dude shows done right, at least in that era. The reason for this is that the only people that really consider the main characters to be cool are themselves, and to the outside world they're treated as lame, lazy, and generally unfortunate people. Benson is actually the secret sauce to this kind of show.
Happy birthday, Chip.
Just drive the bus, you crazy slop jockey!
Hey, bro, you know this nerd? Check this out. Dude, 'cause lion's my specialty.
What are you doing with my sandwich?
What? Don't worry, I'll take care of this with my specialty. This isn't your sandwich, this is our sandwich.
This is your sandwich, huh? Then how come it says Benson on the bag?
You can get away with not having a Benson on a show like Adventure Time because on Adventure Time, it had likable protagonists. Mordecai and Rigby are characters that are disliked in-universe and they're pretty much losers, but the charm is in seeing them get knocked down a peg and how strong the other characters are. The jokes are how pathetic Mordecai and Rigby are a lot of the time. Benson really grounds this show and often brings down Mordecai and Rigby, and he's the kind of anchor to this show because if your main characters are unlikable, without a Benson, without a Squidward, etc., you're just letting your protagonists be awful people and the jokes don't land like they're supposed to. But the characters don't stop at Mordecai and Rigby. Skips, Pops, Muscle Man, High Five Ghost, Margaret, etc. make for a much better supporting cast than most cartoons, and having the main characters not be human beings allows a little foreshadowing into the absurd supernatural stories the show tells if you're a first-time viewer. But the supernatural elements of the show help bind together the characters in the world that this show exists in. If you had just regular human beings as characters, it would be too jarring. But because it's a raccoon, a blue jay, a yeti, a lollipop, a ghost, a gumball machine, and a whatever Muscle Man is, it puts you in almost a surrealist atmosphere that's perfect for the stories they're trying to tell.
What are those?
Oh no, those apple fritters were double glazed by mistake.
Double glazed. We'll take them.
Actually, I gotta throw them out, bro, cause they're not safe for human consumption.
All of these design elements and storytelling devices put together a show that was perfect for the early to mid 2010s. It's not fully slice of life like what perhaps would have been acceptable earlier, but by 2011 audiences were sick of those types of stories. Cartoon Network was, and since CN Real was a disaster in 2009, those first few new shows that came out in the ensuing years would profoundly affect the state of Cartoon Network. If Regular Show and the shows that came out around its time weren't so good, who knows what would have happened to Cartoon Network? Would the quality have dropped to mid-2000s levels, or would a new crop of better shows overshadow it? It's hard to say, but all I can speak to is what Regular Show ended up being, and that's a damn good cartoon. I think that when you really look at the landscape of Cartoon Network and cartoons in general, in 2011, what they needed was a show that didn't take itself too serious, but could still balance heavy and interesting stories with a unique sense of humor. The ohs and the hmms would be very annoying in any other show if the characters and sense of humor weren't set up the way they were here. In a few words, Regular Show is the best immature cartoon out there.